everybody, I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome back to the Dice Tower Library as we look at it one shelf at a time in this, I guess, will be fairly long series. But this is a good way to take a look at shelves and tell you what I think about each shelf. And today, we're taking a look at the Red Raven shelf. Well, there's more games on it than Red Raven, but this shelf here, 1D, has quite a few of the Red Raven games on it. And so I thought this is just a way for me to tell you why these games are in the Dice Tower Library, what I think of these games. So here we go. So like I said, a Red Raven shelf, or at least half this shelf is Red Raven games. They're not all on here. There's a couple small Red Raven games in other places, but these are all the square box ones. And so we have City of Iron 2nd Edition. No reason to have the first since they're very similar. This is a very unique deck building game, and I wonder if this one has slightly fallen out of favor, but I think it's enjoyable. Of all the games here, I like it. Well, no, I don't like it the least. I probably like above and below the least, but I like these both. These are the two I like the least, but I still think they're good games, which is pretty impressive. But City of Iron has introduced me to this unique world that Ryan Laukat builds upon, and for that, I'm very glad. Above and Below. Now, this game has got a lot of rave reviews, although it's the first sort of in a trilogy. To me, the story wasn't as cohesive in this one, but it's still a good Euro-style game of collecting resources and things. Islebound is almost the black sheep of the Ryan Laukat games. This one here, where you're going around and you're conquering islands or using diplomacy to make friends with them. This one here is a game that I really enjoy. It's one of my favorites that he's done, and it just hasn't got a lot of buzz. People kind of go and just play the other ones. It has a great cover. A cool theme. There's just a lot going on in it. Near and Far, possibly my favorite of all his games. It's just a fantastic game. It took everything I wanted Above and Below to be, and it added that cohesive story. That cohesive story was exactly what I was looking for, and Near and Far has that, but it's also a really good game. I mean, the gameplay is phenomenal. There's a lot of cool aspects to it, and there's multiple ways to play it story-wise. The Ancient World is a game where you're fighting these giant titans. Now, this is another 2nd edition. Ryan likes to make 2nd editions of his game. You'll notice that 3 times. We've already seen City of Iron, The Ancient World, and Empires of the Void, all are 2nd editions. This one here, though, was a clear jump to a 2nd edition. This one plays very well. I like the first one. There were a few small problems with it, and I feel like Ryan mixed them all. But if you're like a city and you're defending yourself against these massive, humongous titans, it plays, and it's a very enjoyable game. Empires of the Void 2. This is also a huge jump. Empires of the Void was one of the first games I ever played from Ryan Laukat, and I thought it felt unique and interesting as you had your little, it was a 4X space game of some degree, not so much technology. Empires of the Void adds some really good mechanisms to it, great components, and a different game every time because the universe and how the different races that you run into are set up, just fantastic. Then Sleeping Gods. I mean, what else are we going to say about Sleeping Gods, folks? Sleeping Gods is one of the hottest games of 2021, which is when I'm recording this video. It is a humongous storytelling game. I don't think the gameplay, just the gameplay, taking out the story, is as good as Near and Far, and I don't know if I like it better than Near and Far. But I'll tell you what, story-wise, I don't know that there's a game that even comes close to it. Sleeping Gods has one of the best stories in a game that I've ever seen, and it is a campaign game that you don't even notice the time going by as you play it. Not even really a campaign game, just a really long game. But I normally am not a big fan of long games that are that long, like 10 plus hours, but Sleeping Gods is worth it. All right, so we're done with the Ryan Laukat stuff. So now we're going to take a look here at the other games that just happen to be on this shelf. So first we have Era. Era is essentially a roll and write game. It's kind of a follow-up to Roll Through the Ages because it's the same designer. But you're rolling dice, using those dice to get resources to buy buildings, putting those buildings, physical buildings, on a grid, and then those buildings give you more dice or special abilities and then points at the end of the game. It's a simple game, but there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of mini expansions for Era that add extra little buildings, and they're all in this box because Era is one of those games I can throw little expansions in, and even if you're playing it for the first time, it won't throw you off. Another city building game right here is Expancity. Now, this was a pretty big deal when it first came out from Breaking Games. It's one of the more complex games from Breaking Games, but it is, it is such a good game with fun aspects as you're building commercial and residential buildings in a district and special buildings, trying to get points based on how you play them. I think there's a lot of fun to this one. It's a lighter city building game than most, but it looks good when you're done, and I have fun the whole time I'm playing it. Wingspan, 3 copies. I believe there are 3 games in the Dice Tower library, maybe only 2, that have 3 copies because the game would need to be that popular, and indeed Wingspan is. 2 of these copies have the European expansion in them. The Oceania expansion, I think, is in here separately that you can add in. They are all upgraded to the max. There are so many upgrades from so many different companies for Wingspan that I had a hard time deciding which ones went in each copy, but they're all very upgraded. I have 3 copies, and yet constantly when we're running the Dice Tower library, you come here and they're all gone. It's one of the few games that everybody is grabbing and playing. In fact, Dice Tower Retreat was the first time this game showed up at any sort of convention. And I imagine at the 2021 Dice Tower Retreats, this will be very popular. Then we have Walled City, not nearly as well known as the Wingspan, but Walled City is a game from Mercury Games, who's not really known, I think, for making amazing games. But I just like Walled City. As you're building and trying to control a different city, what's interesting is it's called Walled City, Londonderry, and Borderlands. There are 2 different cities in here. You almost play 2 different ways in the game. It has a bright, cheerful look to it when we look at the back. In fact, it almost has a tasty minstrel way that this game goes, but you're just controlling the different areas in the Walled City. And I like this one. So this one is in the library. And so that is it for another shelf in the library. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time on the Dice Tower.